All
Ready to go.
right. Okay. Thanks, Michaela. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Mayo. I'm the Director of Student Mental Health and Wellness from the Office of Health and Hospital Affairs at SUNY System Administration. Just wanted to welcome you to our final session in our SUNY Wellness Frameworks webinar series, our Voices of Wellness panel. Over the last several months, we've explored wellness from multiple lenses across our 4 sessions, each offering a different pathway toward creating healthier, more supportive campus environments. As a refresher, session 1 introduced the series through a reflective fireside conversation on defining wellness and grounding SUNY in meaningful care, lived experience, and compassion. Session 2 guided us through the 8 dimensions of wellness, reminding us that well-being is not singular. It can be emotional, physical, financial, and other components of wellness. Session 3 walked us through the American College Health Association's Healthy Campus Framework, reinforcing that data-driven goals and strategic alignment are essential for systems level change. And session 4 explored the Okanagan Charter and health promoting campuses movement, reaffirming that wellness is not a program, but a culture and is a shared responsibility and collective commitment. But before we begin today, we'd just like to do a quick wellness check-in with you all, our audience members. And Michaela, if you could pull up our first interactive question for today, that would be great. So we'll give you all a minute or two to answer those questions. Really just trying to get a sense of what energy and where folks are at today. Awesome. See the responses coming in. I'll close the poll in about a minute. Okay. So, here are the results here. Can everyone see those? So it looks like we have 50% of folks managing but feeling a little bit stretched. Understandable, of course. Most significant barrier, limited staffing and resources. And we'll reissue the last question at the end of the webinar, but we're happy to hear that majority of folks have a clear sense of next steps. So thank you for answering those questions for us to start us off today. So I just want to transition to do panelist introductions quickly. And as we enter our final session, today is about dialogue and reflection. So I'd love to begin by inviting each of our panelists to quickly introduce themselves. And if you could share in just 1 or 2 sentences, what does wellness mean to you? Jeremy, I'll kick you off because you're first on my screen.
I knew it was going to be me. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy Blowers. I am the Wellness Intervention Coordinator for Cayuga Community College here in Central New York. And what does wellness mean to me? I think the definition for me has changed over time, but I think it's fair to say that wellness for me is a verb, an action verb. So wellness is something that we're always discovering about ourselves and trying to make improvements and just keep getting better and better as we go.
Jamie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jaime Castillo, Director of Counseling Services at Geneseo. And wellness for me, similar to Jeremy in terms of verb, I feel that it's a care for self and others, is how I would define it on the spot.
Thank you. Joyce, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joyce DeWitt-Parker. So my role here at the University of Albany is Assistant Vice President for Health and Wellbeing. So my portfolio is kind of interesting. I have counseling and student health and health promotion and recreation and wellness, but I also have esports and the marching band. And for me, wellness means like having a sense of coherence, and by that I mean feeling that my values and my purpose and everything else, the way I move through the day or through life, that those things are aligned. So having some sense of coherence, I think, is important, and I think that really shapes how I think about well-being, even on campus, and when I think about campuses in general and the work we do.
Thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Nanavati.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kaushal Nanavati. I'm an integrative family physician, the Assistant Dean of Wellness at SUNY Upstate in Syracuse, and Director of our Integrative Oncology and Survivorship programs. And I think I take wellness from the personal and the professional side, the individual and the systems orientation. I think about optimization of the mind, body, and spirit for the individual in the context of their internal microenvironment, and also in relation to the macro environment, which is the personal relations they have and the meaningful connections they can establish. And from the organization, really creating an environment and a culture that helps this people to thrive. And I think that's really important as well. It's not the absence of problems, right? It's how we navigate through them.
Thank you, Dr. Nanavati. And that's actually a really great transition into wanting to pick your brain a little bit about not forgetting about personal wellness kind of from your medical standpoint. So could you speak to how self-care is not necessarily shouldn't be a luxury, but operational and something that helps sustain helpers, planners, and advocates doing this work every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you look at the literature on wellness, a lot of the conversation, and in that first webinar we did, we talked a little about this. A lot of the conversation is that 80% are organizational issues, right? Inefficiencies, burdens, people feel overwhelmed, etc. And 20% is the personal resiliency piece. And what I say to that is absolutely. And at the same time, how we allocate resources, I think 80% of the resources should be allocated towards the personal resiliency piece, which also includes things like leadership training.
Out a little bit. So I'm gonna think on my feet here. Jaime, Jeremy, Joyce, thoughts about self-care and how we can incorporate that when we're already kind of exhausted or, feels difficult to reach for that personal wellness.
Yeah, I'll go for it first. Yeah. So for me, I think the biggest leap that I needed personally, and what I try to integrate it professionally, is been not seeing as something separate, but something that is part of the routine, whether it's routine in my personal life, but also finding a way to integrate it into the routine and culture professionally, knowing that I can make those priorities in my personal life to make sure that I make decisions for myself, my family, to be able to prioritize knowing that I'm at my best when I'm able to spend time in the areas that are rejuvenating for me, and be able to be honest with myself and to phase out things that are not, that are within my power to do that. And then similarly, as a in my role on campus, having that same philosophy of trying to ensure that wellness, well-being is integrated into the culture and the spheres that I have influence over, knowing that my actions have an impact on the well-being of others, and working in the mental health field, we already have incredibly stressful roles and expectations. And so therefore finding ways that it's not something added to, but it's something that is a part of who we are as a culture. And that's taken time to integrate that, but that's kind of how I view those things.
Thank you, Jaime. So, Dr. Nanavati, seems like you're back with us. If you'd like
Yeah, I'm
to.
back. Again, this must be a SUNY technology issue. I'm just teasing everybody when I say that. So, two practical aspects of this. The one, and I think Jamie made a great point, on the personal side, optimizing mind, body, spirit. So the physical health, nutrition, physical activity, the mental health, stress management, and then spiritual wellness is really about contentment and peace. When we think about what we can do in SUNY as systems, nutrition is one of the low-hanging fruit that we can actually work with on campuses in the way in which we offer, the way in which we educate our staff as well as our students, right? And then from the system side, one low-hanging fruit, I think that is a beautiful thing that we can do across SUNY, would be with HR and benefits and creating a partly like a hybrid plan where there's part flexibility so that we can meet people where they are in terms of their needs for more personal time or more education funds or more value add and different benefit options that still don't over encumber the whole package for a person, but they can flex a part of it so that if they have little kids and need more time at home or an extra week of vacation, they can flex that out for a percentage or two of match on their retirement contribution and then later on flex it back. So I think we have opportunity to proactively, practically, actually engender wellness and well-being systems-wide that actually affects the personal quality of experience that every one of us has at SUNY.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. And I'm wondering if from, your medical lens, a lot of the times, collaborative care is brought up. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about, that sort of model crossing over into higher education, or any thoughts that you might have about, continuum of care and how that impacts wellness.
I think it's fantastic. And the fact that we have this microverse of SUNY, right, the largest state education system with 60 plus campuses. I'm not going to give you an exact number because I'm always wrong. But we have multiple campuses and we have domains of expertise. And part of the goal of this and what we do from here is not only sharing best practices, but creating environments of excellence that can go deeper versus duplicating services in places where it's all limited because of limited resources. So if we can be wise about concentrating, then what happens is we actually create a true integrated model within SUNY that's also integrative, taking the best of what we know and how we optimize people's work experience, create efficiencies, improve upon best practices, right? And actually take the education paradigm to the next level by helping people to know it's not just the theoretical, it's how you apply it practically. And it's not just in your field of expertise, it has to be that in the context of your lived experience as well. And caring about the team, right? It's the we, not the me, that gets us much further ahead in the long term.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And want to just open it up to other folks for any on the panel for any reactions to what Dr. Nanavati shared, especially within the context of college counseling and stepped care model, and trying to help folks meet folks where they're at. So I'll pause there in case y'all have any reactions.
Well, one thought that I have on this, and since we've been bringing this up and talking, and all of us have touched on this point in some way, is that, none of us, here, whether you're in the counseling field, on campus or whatever helping role you play on campus, we're the helpers. And sometimes I think what happens with helpers is that we're so focused and good at being the helpers that we forget that we also need help at some point. And what I see a lot from my, fellow, folks in the field is that they get to a point sometimes where they forget their own wellness. And I think that all of you have touched on that in some way, how important that is for not only for making and promoting our campuses to be the best that they can be, but also to take care of ourselves in the process. So.
A tree without roots provides no shade, right? And that's really important to kind of think about in a systems level as well.
And one point I was going to make, and I think this is absolutely right. You're speaking my language, doctor, but if we are not feeling supported and well, then we can't care for others, the students who need us. And so you'll hear more about that later in my comments, but we really do need to pay attention to our health and well-being. And we learned that through COVID. In some ways, I think sometimes we've forgotten those lessons, but it's really imperative that we do remember all that we learned through that, that crisis.
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Nanavati, from your medical perspective, if we were, not to say your patients, but if you had any preventative advice for folks in terms of, supporting their wellness before things get, to a crisis or what have you, just interested from your medical lens, what would your advice be to a patient to do
Yeah.
preventative care?
So I'll tell you, so this is a great point actually, because again, with the way we practice primary care and integrative medicine, it's not just preventing the problem, it's health promotion, right? Which is to say, for many people, trying to give the power back to the person in this context is to recognize that you don't have to wait for a resource to get started. We get started, and resource over time will come with proof of concept as well. But each one of us and our attitude and what we bring to the table is actually one of the best assets we have, because proactive engagement with positive psychology, positive communication, that smile that I see on all of your faces, right? That alone is engendering improved well-being and wellness in the environment you're in, right? So clearly, I'm not going to tell system or any of the institutional leaders who are on this call, and in fact, I'm going to tell them dedicate more resources to this, right? Because there's absolute value in creating structure in systems. That being said, that does take some time. In the meantime, each of us can bring our best value forward, and that is done by building relationships. I think one thing, if everybody takes from today, if you learn the life stories of the people you work with, how many of their life stories do you actually know, right? When we connect with people as people and understand background, we understand motivation. We also understand how and why they make the choices they make. And then we judge less, we accept more, we build together more. So on the medical side, if I'm giving a prescription for people, it's learning life stories, and most importantly, sharing your own, so that we build more deep connections, more meaningful connections with the people we're with, and you'll be amazed at how much further the goals get and the environment evolves.
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's almost as if you read my mind, because later we will be talking about belongingness and how that helps to bolster wellness. But before we get to that, we'd like to touch base with our other panelists and do a little bit of a refresher of the frameworks that have been covered throughout the series. But before we jump into that content, Michaela, if you could please pull up the questions again. We'd like to first understand kind of barriers to implementation that you feel are occurring on your campus before we dive into the content some more. So, Michaela, if you wouldn't mind pulling up that question, that would be greatly appreciated.
Oh,
Well, if
give me a
anyone,
second. I'm sorry.
that's okay. And folks, if you want to leave in the comment section, one or two barriers as well, that works. Oh, thank you, Michaela. I see the question is up. So folks, if you want to focus on question number 2, that's what will help us frame the next portion. Take a minute for the question, then we'll share that out and dive right back into content. Give it another second. Okay. So, looks like majority of folks limited staffing and resources, which of course, we know and we hear a lot. Insufficient awareness or buy-in, and then third, competing institutional priorities. So we'll keep those barriers in mind as we move forward here. So I am going to pull up some slides quickly, and then I will kick it over to Jeremy to walk us through 8 dimensions of wellness. So let me do that. Okay, Jeremy, I will pass it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. So I was really fortunate to work with folks from Stony Brook, and I got to give a shout out to my Stony Brook people, because this was actually when we talked about the 8 dimensions of wellness and brought it to SUNY and brought it to all of you. It was really enlightening, not only hopefully for the audience who saw the presentation, but it really was enlightening to us. So what I wanted to do was just a couple of things, just to put these up so you could see. We talked a little bit about before that wellness, of course, is not one dimension; that there's multiple dimensions that overlap. One concept that we made sure to reiterate in our presentation was to envision wellness as a series of interlocking gears. And I do this with my students too when I teach them about this topic, is that when any one of those wheels is slowed, or something happens, that inadvertently all of those other wheels turn or slow as well. And what that point brings home is that we can't just concentrate on one of these. We need to be thinking about all of these as we go forward. So our physical health can deteriorate if we don't have good emotional health. Our social health can deteriorate, our physical health can deteriorate because of lack of social, which we saw during COVID, and you kind of get the picture of how that works. But we came away with a few lessons, which I just wanted to share with all of you today. So if you could go to the next slide. So the first lesson that we came away with, that we want everyone to understand, is that the dimensions of wellness are a gestalt. From your Psych 101 days, if you remember, gestalt is something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And just as we're talking about the dimensions of wellness, that each of these components overlap and form a bigger picture of overall wellness, whether it be personal or on our campus. And we can accomplish some great things by ourselves, or good things by ourselves, but great things together. And collaboration is the key, which is a point that we seem to be touching on already here. And I noticed, when we talked about what, the barriers are to, to implementing wellness on our own campuses, this is something to keep in mind, this collaboration, which I'm sure we'll talk about throughout this. The third is connecting the dots. There are so many ideas and people really on your campus and off campus who really want to help, and we don't think about that. Sometimes when we're trying to bring an initiative forward or an idea forward, we think, oh my gosh, I can't do this. It's so overwhelming. How am I going to touch on all dimensions of wellness at once? And the answer is you don't. And you can't. You can focus on the ones that you can accomplish now, and work on the other ones as you go. But the point really is that there are a lot of people out there willing to help, and there are probably people on your own campus that have similar ideas or that really want to jump in, but there hasn't really been a voice to that idea. So you can be that voice, and you can really start to rally people. And I like something you said, Doctor, that when you move forward on these things, whether it's your personal wellness or anything else with these initiatives, that people will come. It's like the build it and they will come. People will see the effort and they're like, wow, I really had that idea too. And I just didn't really have anyone to partner with on campus. And you'll be surprised at how many people off campus want to be a part of the campus wellness environment. So something to keep in mind. And the last really was, the best place to start is just where you are. Again, you look at this and it can be very overwhelming. For a variety of barriers and reasons, we think, well, we can't do this. I really want to do this program. I really want to do this initiative, but I don't know how. And the answer is to quote or paraphrase the doctor, is that, you just start. Every campus is unique. We're not going to mimic things that other campuses do completely, nor should we. The people on our campus, we're unique. Our students are unique. Our environment is unique. We make it what we want it to be. So every campus is unique, and so are the outcomes that you choose to embrace on this. So just some ideas to think about as we go along. And I'm a little late in my gratitude, but I want to thank everyone who is here today for allowing me to be part of this. I really enjoy it. So hope you enjoy the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Jeremy. Always appreciate your expertise. I'm going to pass it over to Jaime now to talk about the Healthy Campus Framework.
Yep. Thank you, Julie. I want to say a special shout out to my co-presenter, Rebecca Harrington over at Delhi, who I think joined us on this call, who we co-presented on this topic back in October. So, how you go about implementing a healthy campus culture can be really daunting. As Jeremy mentioned, there's many dimensions of wellness. It's not an exhaustive list, and trying to go from nowhere to something can feel real intimidating. So, the American College Health Association has a framework, and there's a lot of different frameworks that are out there. If you do a little bit of a research, you can find a lot of different models and frameworks. And this is one that resonates with me and my colleagues. And essentially, that question that Julie posed about what are some of the barriers, right? The top one was limited staff and resources. And then the other two that seemed to be rounding out the top three was competing staff priorities and funding. And if you look at this particular framework, there's an outer ring and an inner ring. So the outer ring is what is identified as an infrastructure. So all the things that are needed, kind of the roads that lead to the cornerstones, which are the circles in the inside. You need a solid infrastructure, utilities, right? Water, heat, electricity, all of these things to be able to build a solid foundation or cornerstone of a healthy campus. So if we look at those barriers of staffing, of competing staff priorities, of resources, those fall into the infrastructure areas. So when we look at how do I go about building a healthy campus framework from wherever your campus is at right now, because as Jeremy mentioned, every campus is unique, this model helps you go line by line and look at, do we have alignment with our campus leadership, right? Because when I look at the barriers and I see limited staff and resources, I say to myself, well, that's not on the staff. That's on the institutional leadership that is not identifying or prioritizing the resources or the funding and prioritizing that in order to support the ideas and the innovations and the shifting culture of well-being on a campus. So we identify that as staff because that's where we are, that's where we live. But according to this model, we would say, how does leadership align with that? How does funding, right? The top two, leadership, funding, competing resources and funding, number one and number two on the leadership there at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Qualified workforce, that was the top, that was the main one, right? Of staff. And so we go each of these and we look at how does our campus assess itself in terms of where we are in each of these domains to look at where do we have to strengthen, where are our strengths, and how can we help to establish some collaborative partnerships across our campuses in order to move the needle in terms of the infrastructure. And then the center circle, the way that the Healthy Campus Framework is set up, is that these are the core areas essentially of service delivery for developing a healthy campus community. So you need to have a collaborative care system, medical services, mental health services, health promotion, all of these areas that you can see around the circle there that say these are the things that need to be put in place from a service perspective in order to have a community that can get its needs met. And there are so many categories and tasks that can be done within each of these circles. But again, it gives you an idea to say, what is the status of our after hours situation on campus? How are we supporting our community in need after the office is closed during the day? What's our relationship with university police or after hours contracting? What are our assessments and health screenings of students that we require before and after they arrive on campus? What's the status of our mental health services? Are we in alignment with what our community wants and what we're capable of? So these are just examples of ways of being able to look at your campus in a systematic way, in a way to kind of operationally define how your campus can create a pathway to building its own identity as a healthy campus.
Thank you, Jamie. And I'm going to pass it over to Joyce to talk about health promoting campuses movement.
Thanks, Julie. And to follow suit with everyone else, I'd like to thank my co-presenter who's on this call right now, Joanne Fiore-Conti from Binghamton. It was great fun working with her, and I think there are other collaborations that possible to come. So let me talk about this a little bit. So what is the health promoting campuses movement? It's really an international movement that has existed since the mid 80s with the Ottawa Charter. And you can see on that slide some of the components of that. And then there was the Okanagan Charter, which people are a little bit more familiar with because that charter picked up a lot of steam. So it's not as if one charter, the Ottawa is obsolete. No, they build on each other, because things have just improved and gotten better over time. So this is an international movement and a systems-based approach to embedding well-being into the culture of all operations in higher education, and it's very aspirational. So with the Okanagan Charter, really there are two calls to actions: to embed health in all policies and practices, and to promote well-being for everybody on campus, not just students, but student, staff, faculty, everyone who would visit campus, lives on campus, works on campus, plays on campus, and to advance health promotion locally and globally. So that is it in a nutshell, but then there are obviously some other components there too. So basically, instead of thinking about our work only in terms of programs and services, the movement really suggests that campuses shift the focus and to think about the structures and the systems that are in place and the norms that influence well-being. And so it's not one or the other, it's a both and approach is the way I like to talk about it. So it's supporting individuals at all levels and also designing systems that are healthier on our campuses. And so why does this matter? Dr. mentioned this earlier, Nanavati, microverse, right? So if we're a microverse, and we are, so we're like micro communities, and that's really important, where the built environment and academic pressures, all of that, the social climate, policies, and the daily routines all really shape well-being for everyone. So it's not just one person's responsibility or one unit, but it's the entire institution's responsibility. And so we focus a lot or as much on downstream, which are the programs and services, as upstream, which include policies and leadership and other systems that are in place. And so the premise is, if we are doing all of those things, and this is aspirational, but if we're doing those things, we have a healthier campus. And so we're able to prevent some distress that people wouldn't normally have. We're able to improve that sense of belonging and well-being, and people are working better, learning better, growing better, and thriving. And so with the Limerick Charter, or the Limerick Framework, which was actually just launched on December 1st, it takes us a little bit further, and it provides actionable steps for people. So some folks were a little bit frustrated with the Okanagan Charter because it's like, okay, this is very nebulous, and what does this mean, and how do you do this? Well, it really depends on each campus. So the Limerick Framework gives you some actionable steps, and so that's really good. And they've also kind of refocused. So they say planet, place, and people, which was interesting. And I remember even in Ireland, I was kind of debating, why would we do this? But if we don't have a healthy planet, then we're not going to have, and healthy places, we're not going to have healthy people, in a nutshell. You can go to the next slide. So if I think about UAlbany, so UAlbany adopted the Okanagan Charter in 2021, and now there's some other campuses within the SUNY system that have adopted it as well. We built a well-being collective, which is a cross-campus, like, shared leadership model with a structure that includes the Advocacy Council, and each component of this is really designed intentionally to include faculty and staff. It doesn't belong to student affairs. We have human resources also involved in this because this is really important. And then we have different work groups that are focused on various components of this. model, and that's faculty, staff, and students. A few, is there, do you want me to say more at this point, or do you want me to stop, Julie?
Yeah, if you want to give a little more
Okay,
context.
okay, all right, good. A few examples of this. It's really a mindset shift. And so I think that's the first thing is shifting the mindset. And then, as Jeremy said, then other things will follow. And so it's nice to walk around campus, and I think people see me as a health and well-being person, right? And so I wonder sometimes if are they talking about the health and well-being when I'm not in the room, or are they only talking about it because I'm in the room? But then I check with people and they say, no, people are talking about health and well-being. They're talking about, does this support my well-being, or does this not support my well-being or my health? Or, oh, X, Y, and Z is not good for my well-being. So it's nice to know that people are having those conversations when I'm not in the room, right? So it's not about me. But one of the things we did was we reorganized and reframed our it was prevention and education, but now our health promotion unit. So we've built that. We have a strong staff of 5 in our health promotion unit, which is really focused on population health. We launched Thrive U Albany this semester. It's like a soft launch, so we're going to be continuing with that. And Jeremy, back to one of your points, it's helping students to connect the dots. And not only students, but faculty and staff to connect the dots between what they are doing in their offices and how this supports health and well-being of people. We will be launching the Purple Path, which is fitness stations coming in the spring. And really, we think about how to integrate wellness into sustainability and climate work and campus design. So it's really thinking very broadly about, who we are, what we do. And it's been really, really important because I think it's helped morale in many cases, because people who didn't feel that they had a voice before now feel that they have a voice that is being heard. And so it's not only students, but faculty and staff who feel like people care and that there's a sense of belonging.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And that dovetails perfectly into the next question that I had here. I know we're talking about, belongingness, and Dr. Nanavati mentioned knowing, the stories of those that you work with, and, just creating a sense of community. So I'm wondering, now that we're thinking about wellness through this lens, how do you see belongingness being fostered on your campus through, a wellness lens, or just bringing the community together? I assume since you all work closely with students and sometimes faculty and staff, that you may be the gears that get the movement moving. So just wondering what your thoughts are on belongingness and flourishing, and how that relates to overall wellness. And we can kind of bounce off each other in a conversational sense for this portion of the panel.
So I can start a little bit. So I think great points were just made. And one of the things that came to mind was that policy dictates behavior, right? And so that's really important. And in the context of belongingness, creating policies that invite proactive engagement. We've got some commensality groups and peer support groups and opportunities to not only meet with like-minded or people at similar stages, but I think it's also important to recognize that there's generational awareness that's important. And when we think about, what we're creating structures that are intended to last beyond not only our life cycle within the institution, but that are malleable to different generational needs over time. And for leadership to understand and connect with, having mentors who are generations coming up as much as generations ahead of us are important. So flourishing is a great word. And I think it requires nurturing, it requires connection, it requires opportunity, all of which can become a part of policy in the ways in which institutions, engage and invite employees to engage at all levels. I think that's really important. Hierarchies may be administrative, but in the world of wellness, every spoke of the wheel is paramount and should have a voice at the table that has equal weight.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the mentorship, and I think that's important because I do get a lot of faculty and staff who come and they'll see what we're doing and say, "Oh, this is really great," and I'm glad that there are people on this campus that do this, and I have to remind them, well, you're those people, and their response sometimes is, well, what can I do? I'm a psychology professor, or I work in whatever department it is, and I asked them for a moment, and Dr. Nanavati, you said it really well, and I'm trying to remember your words, but basically that remember back to a time, take a pause, remember back to a time when you were a student. Who is the person, the people that really helped make you who you are? Who supported you, who took you under the wing? And so you see their faces light up in those stories that they have. And my next point to them is you are that person for somebody. You are that person. And I think that's very empowering sometimes on campus.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I can say a few words. When I think about when you just mentioned that, Jeremy, I can tell you who the person was. When I was a doctoral student here at the university, my first week here, and I was in the library feeling very lost and overwhelmed. And this librarian just said, "Sweetie, where are you from? Like, are you new here?" And she started asking me, "Have you met this person and that person?" And I hadn't. And so she jotted down some names. That woman set the frame for me because I felt like I belonged because she noticed me, a librarian with a 5-minute conversation or less, right? But it made all the difference in the world to me. So one of the things we learned, in terms of lessons, like not to mention COVID again, but with COVID, we made a conscious decision as a campus to make outreach calls. So we called 10,000 students over the course of, the time that we were away. It was as good for us, for our well-being, the people who were calling, as it was for the students to receive the calls. And I remember on more than one occasion talking to a student who became just very emotional and saying, I didn't even think anybody knew I existed, but yet I'm getting a phone call, and the phone call isn't to do therapy, because I'm a psychologist, but it was just to check in. And how are you doing? And is there anything we can do to be supportive to you? And, how's your day going? But that made a big difference. And so we heard many of those stories, not only from students, but also from employees who felt that, they were not seen and heard and discovered that they were. But we took those stories into our strategic planning process last spring. And so with that strategic plan within student affairs and enrollment, again, there was some debate about this, but these are the 3 priorities: elevating employee culture, centering student engagement and belonging, and strengthening collaborations across and beyond campus in that order, right? So usually it was centering students first. And so it really made a big difference to people to see that we were centering employees first. And then in terms of Timely Care is a third-party vendor that we adopted after a lot of thought. I mean, I'm a psychologist, so I thought, okay, what are the pros and the cons to doing this? But it expanded our ability to support students who wouldn't normally be supported. So our fully online students are now supported because they weren't supported. They could do counseling, right? But not necessarily the medical care in the same way. If students are studying abroad, they're still connected to the campus through Timely Care if they choose to use that service. If we have students who are spending the semester down in DC working with the legislator, they're still supported and connected. And so those are some conscious decisions we made to help students continue to feel like they belonged, and faculty and staff to feel that as well.
These are all very motivating. I love hearing what everyone's doing. And for us, we've been thinking, we know students are at the center of our college experience, right? And at the same time, if we as staff and faculty aren't prioritizing our own well-being, and to Jeremy's point about like you are that person, faculty member who sees the student, we know that the investment in training and changing in culture starts with our colleagues, because we're the ones that are student facing, we're the ones that are there. So some of the things that we've done to encourage kind of flourishing and belonging for our colleagues, and by that allows them to create the space, we hope, to be available to be present for our students. Just in our center a couple years ago, we came back from a conference and a topic was burnout and things like that. And we, a couple of members of my team shared, it'd be interesting if we were able to have kind of a wellness hour during the week. And we piloted it and kind of push back against those ideas that if staff are given free time, they'll abuse it. And that's just not the case. Turns out people take the time when they want to take the time because that's what's rejuvenating. So it's been a couple of years of that, and it's great to be able to see giving individuals an hour of guilt-free well-being time to go to a campus event to take care of yourself, whether that's going to the fitness center or another kind of whatever well-being means to you. I'm trusting you as an adult to make that decision for yourself, and that's worked out really well. In terms of staff and faculty, to address kind of Jeremy's point, is we rolled out a curriculum called Well at Geneseo, that we're rolling out this semester with my colleague Laura Swanson, to be able to have specific electives and professional development pathways for our staff and faculty to learn mental health first aid, to learn about how to take advantage of campus events around centered on well-being, to learn about CARES. So if you see a student in distress, you don't have to email me, the director, FYI. You can actually intervene because that's your role as somebody who has a relationship with the student. And then also learning how to be innovative in understanding how you can integrate components of well-being into your practice in higher education. And again, I'll shout out Laura again, who I know is on the call, but piloting this semester a well-being hour, which is just an open consultation, an opportunity for staff and faculty to stop by once a week and get guidance on how can you think differently about your academic environment? How can you think differently about your environment as a staff member and integrate components of wellness and well-being, that helps you feel centered, that helps you contribute to that framework, but then it helps pay it forward to the students that are there. So we've been really working this semester on the upstream stuff that we know it takes time to plant those seeds, that will then hopefully flourish later on. So those have been some of the kind of micro things that we've been doing on our campus that we really believe in, and we've seen successes so far.
I wanna piggyback on what Joyce has said with the three Ps, with the planet, people, and place. And so to go a little further with the Ps, I think about purpose. Again, a practical point, which is if you want to help your employee team member in the immediate, as a leader, I think it's important to ask them what they want their purpose to be, and then how can we help support that, right? And thinking about processes that engender that within systems, and focusing on progress over time, progress, as the British would say. But really, one of the keys to sustained happiness is recognizing that if your happiness is hinged on outcomes, you're going to yo-yo through life. If you get the outcome, you're happy. If you don't, you're not, right? But when it's connected to, or I should say, and when it's connected to, but being a negative word, and when it's connected to input, which is a sense of durable plentitude, that, we're going to create improved processes that allow people to fulfill their purpose to the best of their ability, and along the way give them opportunity to gauge how they're doing and support them in the process. Then the input actually helps people to have a sustained sense. Things won't always work out. That's life. However, if we're getting a chance to fulfill our purpose, I think for most of us, most of the time, that's what we're looking for, as a major component of our lived experience, both at home and at work, right? And for students to learn that early on helps them to not have the fear of, quote, failure, because what they're realizing is that there's learning opportunities in everything. And as systems, we realize that we're not going to get it perfect from the get-go. But if we do shared practices, if we create menus of options based on what we're all doing, then people in different spaces at different stages can look at that menu of options and say, here's where we are. This seems like a great place for me to start. And to the point of, start where you are, absolutely. And then look at the menu of options you've got based on our excellent colleagues at different places who are really creating some wonderful, wonderful things that we need to create greater awareness of, right? I'll also say that marketing is 90% of all of this, right? We have to share the good, and we have to proactively and overtly share the positive engagement that occurs and the positive work that people in all domains on our campuses do, because we hear the other stuff very quickly and it spreads like wildfire. So we have to proact in sharing the good as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And I want to give folks time to ask questions of you all and tap into your expertise. So for folks who are tuning in, if you feel comfortable taking yourself off mute, you can ask questions that way. We have the chat. I believe we do have a question in the chat. And it's talking about examples of policy changes. And Dr. Nanavati, I know you had brought that up, but if you have any guidance on where folks might be able to look or kind of tease out the policy piece, and others, of course, feel free to answer as well.
Yeah, and I think my colleagues all have given examples and experience as well. But you think about like the HR thing, I think is a big win that could meet the needs of different faculty on different campuses. Academic faculty don't always need more time because some of them have summer time to do some things. But then in the clinical world, it's a 365-day thing. So for them, that may be value, right? So you create something flexible as a policy, a SUNY policy, and I'll throw random numbers out, so please do not hold anybody to this. But let's say we had a 70-30 split where 30% of your benefit value was a flexible, or 80-20, so that the overall value doesn't change, right? And that could be part of policy. You talk about the wellness hour or the wellness days. In the medical institutions, we give students per rotation some wellness time so they can get to appointments, they can take time to refresh, recharge, etc. The same can apply to staff and faculty. Opportunities, policy that people do something to enhance a skill set, and you give them a menu of options and support them in being able to do that, right? These are all policy driven, that when it's in policy, it's going to be the norm versus, ask and maybe you'll get.
Sure, that makes sense. Jaime, looks like there's a question for you in the chat. You train people on your campus to address some student concerns.
Yeah.
How do you make sure? Yeah.
So the purpose of all of that is not to train people to be therapists. It's to give people, number one, the function of that is to say your job is not to provide crisis work, to be a therapist, but being employed on a college campus, you have the privilege of having access to a lot of offices that are supporting, right? So I'm not a financial aid specialist. So if a student comes in needing financial aid, I know I can make that referral in connection to a financial aid practitioner. So that's what we kind of encourage people to do is we give them some basic skills that says, we're not asking you to do therapy. We're asking you to get back to being a human with empathy and compassion, as both Jeremy and Joyce shared. Like there was one person that found them and had a connection, and that means the world. So instead of saying, oh, this person is demonstrating some sort of emotion, I need to get away from them because that's not my job, we're giving them the reassurance and validation that just joining somebody for a moment and providing empathy as you would for anybody in your life goes a long way. And being knowledgeable about what are the resources that are available. So saying something like, I'm not a counselor, I can't help you in all these things, I'll do the best that I can, but there are offices on campus that can help you with this. Are you aware of this, right? And being able to help individuals recognize that if just like if you live in New York and you see something, you say something on the subway or on the airplane, it's the same thing. If you recognize that a student hasn't been in class for a long time or is demonstrating some behaviors that seem outside of their normal demeanor, this is what you can do about it. Don't ignore it. Here's where you can make a simple referral to a campus team who specializes in aggregating all that information. It's not your job to be the intervener in that moment necessarily, but if you have an observation about a student that you're concerned about, here's what you can do for it. So it's been a process over the last 3 years to change that culture, and now we have some more and more firm training and follow-up and opportunities for people to feel okay asking questions to us of saying like, I'm not sure what to do with this. And now we've been able to take kind of the sting out of the I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything, to now the phase where people are asking questions and we have more referrals than we need or more referrals, but it's an overcorrection, but that's okay. Um, but that's kind of how we do it. We don't say everybody's now a licensed therapist. It's you should know what's available and you should be able to ask somebody how they're doing. That's just being a member of a community. And that's kind of the mindset that we have around it. But it does not supersede any of your already established ethical or job responsibilities in your role. And we always ask people to work within their comfort level. We're just looking to expand that comfort level a little bit and allowing people to be advocates for all the offices on campus.
Thank you for that. Folks, it looks like we have 4 minutes left. Just want to hold space for any other questions. And again, feel free to drop it in the chat. Joyce, I see you took yourself off mute.
I did. I wanted to just, I think that training that you're talking about, Jaime, is so important for the reasons you mentioned, but also it helps. There are also so many myths, or there's so much misinformation on many of our campuses. And through those dialogues and building relationships with people, you can dispel some of those myths, you know? I've had people on campus say, well, timely care will cost us money. It's like, no, it's not going to cost you as a student any money whatsoever. Or the wait is going to be long. Nope, absolutely not. The wait is 8 minutes. Um, and the wait list at CAPS is not a month long. It's much less than that. But CAPS triages people. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I forgot to mention earlier is based on how we realigned our strategic plan, we started 2 professional development opportunities, a new professionals institute and a mid-level professionals institute. I just was the chair for the mid-level one and I missed them all. So we spent, an hour and a half together over the course of 8 weeks. And these were people from a cohort of 12 people from all over the division, who got to know each other and learn from each other, learn what each office was doing, but also learned, a lot about what it means to be a leader at the next level. So I think those are opportunities too. And we did it over the course of a semester, but it doesn't have to be. It can be over the course of, 2 or 3 days. But that investment, I think, really matters in terms of employee well-being.
Absolutely. Before we close out, Michaela, could you please pull up the last question that we saw? We'd just like to get a sense of where folks are at with taking next steps on their campus for wellness. And also you can feel free to drop in the chat as well. If you feel prepared to take next steps, if there are barriers. Thank you, Michaela, for pulling the question up. So we'll give folks about a minute to answer since we're almost at time, just so we can get a sense of what comes next.
And in the meantime, while they're answering, I will just say that, we don't have that flexibility in HR policy at this time. Somebody asked that question, but it is something that the chancellor is aware of. And even with the unions, several of the unions are willing to look at the potential And because we have microcultures in different college environments, we have to be cognizant that it's not going to be a one policy fits all type of a thing, but the idea of creating flexibilities based on campus needs or even stage of education paradigm, whether it's community college, undergraduate institution, health institutions, that would make the difference.
Thank you for that feedback. Let's see, where did my student? Well, we're going to wrap up now because we are at time. I just want to thank you so much to all of our panelists for participating in 2 separate webinars and for coming back to share their expertise. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us throughout the series. Really appreciate your time and commitment to this topic. Please keep an eye out for a feedback form. We'd love to hear folks' feedback about the webinar series as we would like to host future series. And wishing you all a happy holiday season, and thank you again for attending. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.